everyone. Welcome to week 3 of our series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do, kind of following the life of Joseph. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Elizabeth Clark, and I moved here to Knoxville about 5 years ago from Alabama. I have 3 young kids, so I'm really excited to take a little break to talk to you guys today. So the theme of this week's lesson is, when you don't know what to do, do the next right thing. It sounds easy, right? But at least for me, it's not always as simple as it sounds. I want to start with a little story about a time when in my heart I knew what the right thing to do was, but I didn't do it. During the summer after graduation, I was hanging out with a big group of friends one evening, and one of my guy friends was there who had just come back from freshman year of college. We were kind of hanging out and talking and kind of hitting it off, and he was cute and I was kind of into it. Anyway, we were both single at the time, but the problem is he was the ex of one of my friends. We weren't best friends, but we hung out in the same friend group and we ate lunch together, and she was super nice, and I liked her. Anyway, we're hanging out in this big friend group one evening. He's flirting with me, and a couple of thoughts go through my head. Just brush him off. It's your friend's ex. You don't want to get messed up in that. But then, it's harmless. You're both single. They've been broken up for a while. What if this is going to turn into something real? Also I didn't know, but I had a feeling that she wasn't totally over him yet. And, maybe I should brush it off and at least talk to her, or wait till the timing is better before I really start hanging out with him. So we're all hanging out and he's flirting with me, and, we're both kind of into it, and I need to make a decision. With all these options, the question blaring in my mind was, what should I actually do? Some of you would confidently say, brush him off and hang with your friends. You'll still have a great time. Others of you might say, it's not a big deal. You're both single and they broke up months ago. This could be the start of something real. And here's what I'm getting at. Knowing what to do isn't always simple in the moment. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What to do when you don't know what to do. Today we're looking at the dilemma of what to do when we don't know what is right and what is wrong. It'd be nice if doing the right thing was always clear and obvious, right? But we all know that isn't the case. Sometimes the right thing isn't obvious. If you're dating somebody but you're texting someone else a lot, and you're like, well, I'm not cheating, we're just talking, that's not wrong. Or is it? Or your teammate's going on about how the coach is a jerk and bench them for no reason, but you know that they really need to work on their passing game. Is it wrong to tell them? It hurt for sure, but is it wrong not to tell them if fixing that one thing would get them more time in the game? Or you have a friend that's really doing something that bothers you, and you don't know if you should talk to them about it or just let it go. You're wondering, if I confront them, am I gonna look like the jerk? Is this my issue? Is this their issue? Should I just get over it? What's the right thing in these situations? And even more importantly, sometimes the right thing costs us something. Once I decided to flirt back with my guy friend and go out to dinner together, just the two of us, I knew it would cost me something. Specifically, it cost me a friendship. We didn't have a big fight or anything, but we kind of never really talked after that. And on top of that, the relationship never really went anywhere. We hung out a few times, but we went to different colleges and we just kind of drifted apart. So maybe the right thing is to be honest with your parents, but if you're honest with them, you'll probably lose your phone or your car. Or the right thing isn't to be in that relationship anymore, but if you break up, you're going to hurt their feelings and you're going to be single and alone. The right thing isn't to gossip about that friend, but if you say no, then somehow you feel like the loser and it costs you socially. The right thing is to go home at curfew, but it seems like everyone's having fun, and saying no will cost you a good time and maybe even a good story. And is getting home a little late really that big of a deal? But maybe you lose your parents' trust. Do you see what I mean? Sometimes what's right feels complicated, and even when we do what we know is right, sometimes it's difficult. Or even when we know what's right, sometimes it's difficult to actually do it. I know. So with that in mind, let's pick back up with Joseph. For the past 2 weeks, we've been talking about Joseph, who's one of the most famous people from the Genesis story. And his story is pretty crazy. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers. And the story we're going to look at today can be really helpful for all of us. It'll help us know what to do when we don't know what to do. So when we left off last week, Joseph was sold into slavery, and we're going to pick up with what happened afterward. We're told Joseph was given to work in the house of an office of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had absolute power. Whatever Pharaoh said, that's what happened. So you can imagine working for one of Pharaoh's officials was kind of stressful. Depending on the situation, it could go really well or really badly. And there was no telling what situation Joseph was going to walk into. But like we mentioned last week, the author was quick to point out that God was with Joseph, and he had favor with the official whose name was Potiphar. That means that Potiphar was a fan of Joseph's. You can find the story, if you want to follow along in your Bible, in Genesis 39, verses 2 through 10. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care, with Joseph in charge. He did not concern himself with anything except for the food that he ate. Things weren't so bad for Joseph because Potiphar trusted him, and things weren't bad for Potiphar because with Joseph in charge, he was thriving. But then things took kind of a strange turn. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." This tells us a couple of things. Apparently, Joseph was a good-looking guy, and Potiphar's wife was into him. Now, this is where things got complicated. Because Joseph was a servant, he was required to obey not only Potiphar, but also his wife. And if he refused her commands, there was nothing holding her back from punishing him. He could be kicked out of their household, which was a pretty nice house, or he could even lose his life. But if he did what she asked, that would create a whole other set of problems. She was married to his boss, and both options came with problems. It wasn't easy or clear. So what did Joseph do when he didn't know what to do? But Joseph refused. With me in charge, he told her, "My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Basically, out of respect for Potiphar and out of an even bigger respect for God, Joseph simply did the next right thing. Joseph didn't make a decision based on how things might turn out for him, like losing his job or even his life. He made a decision based on what was right, and what was right in that moment was turning down Potiphar's wife. It was complicated, it was challenging, it was the right thing to do. And his life didn't exactly go that well as a result of making this right choice. In fact, things got a lot worse. Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of rape, and Potiphar believed her. He had Joseph thrown into prison, which is not exactly the happy ending you're hoping for when you do the right thing. But Joseph didn't make his decision based on what it might mean for him. He did what was right with God and trusted God with the outcome. The outcome for Joseph in this situation wasn't great. But here's a word I want you to know that changes everything when it comes to doing what's right. And that word is integrity. Maybe you've heard that word before. Integrity means being the kind of person who does what's right, regardless of the outcome and regardless of who is around. Sometimes doing the right thing will get you applause, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes doing the right thing will cost you something, and sometimes it won't. And sometimes doing the right thing will make you look good, and sometimes it will make you look stupid. We don't get to decide how things turn out, but we get to decide what type of person we want to be. And being a person of integrity will lead to a life with less regret, more respect, and a better idea of what to do in every situation. Chances are we'll never find ourselves in the kind of situation Joseph was in, but we will find ourselves in all kinds of situations where we'll have to decide what to do without knowing how it's going to play out. It could go better than we thought, or it could go worse. But when we make our decisions with integrity based on what is right, we are living lives we can be proud of. So here's one thing we can remember. When you don't know what to do, do the next right thing. Try this. Think of one situation where you know the right thing to do but are afraid to do it. What are you afraid of? If fear wasn't a factor, what would you do? Determine what kind of person you want to be. I'm not talking about 5 years from now. What kind of person do you want to be this week, today? What do you need to do today that will set you up to be the kind of person who respects themselves and can be proud of their decisions? Not because they're easy, but because they're right. So here's the deal. Most of us know the right thing to do in most situations, but fear keeps us from acting how we know we should. More than that, fear and inaction keep us from becoming who we want to be right now. That's why learning to live with integrity, living in a way on the outside that matches what we think and believe on the inside, is the most direct route to being who we want to be. But that doesn't always make it easy to do. So the next 2 steps are kind of some tools that maybe will help you when you face one of these situations. So one of the A good thing like I've done is try to find a trusted friend who can kind of hold you accountable. So a good thing you can do is tell that friend the next right thing you're going to do, and then invite them to pray for you and ask you this week if you did it. And that's a good way to start living a life of integrity, knowing the next right thing and then doing the next right thing, and inviting someone else to come alongside us. Doing the next right thing doesn't have to be a lonely venture. Find a trusted friend you can invite into your story. There is a strength that shows up when you allow someone to show up with you. We all need a trusted friend who will help us figure out the right thing in complicated situations. As you go about your week this week, I want you to think about situations where you need to do the next right thing. Think about exactly what you need to do, but also know you don't have to do this alone. You can tap into the help of God and the help of others. When you don't know what to do, do the next right thing. I want to finish with a little prayer as we go into the coming week. Lord, help me trust in you completely, even when fear threatens to weaken my faith. You are greater and you are stronger than anything I will ever face. So when the time comes for me to be brave, help me remember you are always with me. Give me a courageous heart, a heart that does the right thing even if it's afraid, and a heart that walks boldly with confidence into whatever you call me to do. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope everybody has a great week.